The morning sunlight slid across the granite countertops like it had every day for years. Familiar, warm, but that morning everything else felt foreign. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, clutching my phone like it had just delivered a death notice. "Don't come to the wedding." That was it. That's all it said, from my father. No punctuation, no explanation. Just a surgical removal by text. I stared at it again, hoping maybe I had misread. My eyes, still adjusting to the morning light, scanned every letter. Nope. Still the same. 3 years of planning their events, cleaning up behind them, showing up. Erased in one message. The coffee pot was cold. I hadn't even pressed brew yet. It sat there like everything else in this house, useful but silent. I leaned against the counter, feeling the cool edge under my palm. The suburban hush outside the window pressed in against the storm building behind my ribs. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou's voice echoed in my head, sharper now. I used to think my father was stern but fair. This was cowardice disguised as clarity. I'm 38, event planner by trade, the kind of person who makes chaos look like choreography. I've handled hundreds of weddings, some for strangers, but most for my family. I did Daniel's wedding 3 years ago, arranged the venue, chased the florist, ironed out seating charts with military precision. And Rachel's baby shower, every balloon arch, every hors d'oeuvre, every fake smile. That was me, and I never charged them a dime. Because that's what family does, right? You show up, you fix things. You don't keep score, but maybe I should have. I used to think I was the steady one, the one who didn't rebel, didn't run. I stayed, I built, I kept the peace. I was the daughter who made sure everything looked fine, even when it wasn't. There's a conference in Paris next week. I signed up months ago, more out of curiosity than intention. It was supposed to be a professional development opportunity. I hadn't booked the flight yet. Until now. 2 months ago, my father called late, nearly midnight. "Flower vendor cancelled," he said. "You'll find another, right?" That's how it always started, not a request, a statement. I did it, of course. Found a new vendor, paid the deposit from my own account. They said they'd reimburse, but no one ever did. The spreadsheets, the schedules, the backup plans. I juggled them all while holding down my actual job. "You're good at this," Daniel had said once. "Just make it happen. Not thank you, not we owe you. Just do it." Because I always had. And yesterday I paid another invoice, a final deposit on the tent rentals for the wedding. Funny, isn't it? I wasn't even going to be there. Was it love, or was I just the family toolkit? The coffee hissed as I finally turned it on. I poured a cup, letting the bitterness burn the back of my throat. That helped. A little. I wasn't crying. I hadn't cried yet. I wasn't even angry, not fully, just clear. My grandmother used to say, "Your worth isn't what you give away, it's what you hold on to." Well, I've been giving for decades. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. The third time, that one's on me. I sat down with my coffee and opened my laptop. The Paris ticket was still available. Round trip, direct. I clicked through slowly, deliberately, each keystroke like a small revolution. I could stay here. Let them pretend I never existed. Let them frame me as difficult, dramatic, unreliable, all the words they use when women stop being convenient. Or I could choose me. I booked the flight, then I got up, walked to the drawer and pulled out a napkin, plain white. I folded it slowly, carefully, into the shape of a maple leaf. My grandmother taught me that once, her way of bringing fall inside the house before the leaves turned. I didn't pack much, just enough to get by. No notes, no calls, no explanations. If they could dismiss me with a text, I didn't owe them more than silence. Zipping up my suitcase, I glanced at my phone again. Another message had popped up. I didn't open it. If they wanted me gone, they just got their wish. Paris looked the same way it did in postcards, but I didn't feel like someone who belonged on one. I sat alone at a small cafe near the Seine, the kind of place where people order espresso like they're ordering purpose. The clink of cups, the chatter in French, the way sunlight danced on the water, it all should have felt like a reward. But I was just displaced. There was freedom in the air. Sure, I had gotten on a plane with no one's permission but my own. But even here across the ocean, I felt tethered to something I couldn't name. My phone buzzed again. I flipped it over. 17 missed calls, a few from Romilly, most from unknown numbers. I didn't call back. I didn't even think about it. But it was there, in the gut. A quiet pressure. Wherever you go, there you are. Isn't that what they say? I took a long sip of coffee and tried to believe I'd made the right choice. The thing is, guilt doesn't need an invitation. It just shows up. Especially when you've spent your life trained to carry responsibility like a second skin. I remembered the moment I hit confirm on the flight. My finger didn't hesitate. It was instinct, not an escape, a declaration. Growing up, I was always the one behind the camera. Every family vacation, I documented the smiles, the inside jokes, the candid moments. Funny how I was never in the photos. Always the observer, always out of frame. I glanced around the cafe. A couple shared a croissant, hands touching without thinking. An old man read the newspaper like it contained a secret only he could decode. A young woman fed pieces of tart to a toddler with jam-covered fingers. Families, love, messy, honest presents. And I thought, I'm not missing the wedding. Huh? They're missing me? I had given them everything, my time, my skills, my quiet loyalty, and they traded it for convenience. Sometimes the only way to stay in a family is to leave it for a while. I swirled the spoon in my cup, the metal tapping against porcelain like a slow heartbeat. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. The number of missed calls had jumped to 42. Dad's name stared back at me from the screen, bold and unread. My thumb hovered over the green icon. If I answered, I'd be back in their story, cast in the same role I always played, the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who swallows her own hurt, so the family can keep pretending everything's fine. I didn't leave to play their part. I left to write my own. I set the phone down. The waiter caught my eye, raised an eyebrow like he could sense the tension. I gave a faint smile. He nodded and walked on. That small kindness steadied me more than I expected. I reached for my bag, pulled out my planner and tried to focus. Then the buzz came again. Not a call this time, a bank notification. I tapped it open, thinking it was another travel alert. But no, it was a charge, large. From the wedding venue back home, I blinked, looked. Again, my credit card, my name, my money, they were using it. I sat perfectly still. The world around me kept moving, the river, the laughter, the espresso machine hissing like it always had. But inside, something shifted. Months ago, Romilly had asked if she could use my card, just for the deposit. Said it was temporary. We'll pay you back the second the funds come through. I said yes. Of course I said yes. And now? They were buying flowers, renting chairs, hiring photographers. For a wedding I was banned from attending. I bought the centerpiece for a celebration I wasn't welcome at. You can't build your freedom on stolen bricks. I didn't cancel the card. Not yet. Not because I forgave them, but because I wanted to see how far they'd go. Who would be next to charge something? Would anyone even think to check with me? Grandma always said, never play your last card first. I opened my planner and began jotting notes. Not about work, not about the wedding, just thoughts, observations, details I didn't want to forget. The kind you gather when you stop pretending everything is fine. I wasn't crying, I wasn't shaking, but I wasn't numb either. I was watching. Another buzz, this one from my email, a new message, no subject, just one word. Photos. There was an attachment. I didn't open it, but my heart already knew this was not an apology. I sat at the edge of my apartment sofa, phone trembling in my fingers, heart pounding like it was catching up with a lifetime of whispered betrayals. The screen glowed with an unopened email attachment. My mind slowed. If I open this, I might never look at them the same again. Closure, not revenge, I told myself. But what if that line had blurred long ago? Some truths burn, but lies rot in silence. I inhaled, tapped the screen. The images loaded, wedding invitation mock-ups with names crossed off. Mine. Rehearsal dinner snapshots. Everyone in frame except me. I froze at one photo. My cousin in the dress I bought. Her face bright in the light I thought would be mine. Another shot, a board behind the cake. My name scratched out. They didn't just forget me, they erased me. They held a celebration and lit the candles with my silence. Memories collided. I remembered paying for that dress with my own card, telling myself this time they'd see me. My father's promise echoed, "You'll always have a place at the table." But turns out that table had legs I never stood on. I deleted the email. The screen went black, but her image in that dress haunted me, a quiet grief carved out of pride. Tears threatened but didn't fall. Anger was too loud. Disappointment was sharper. Then a message arrived from Margot, my cousin, the one who never snubbed me. "They said you'd make a scene," she typed, "that your presence would ruin the harmony." She sent a voice note. I pressed play. Romilly's voice. "She's not wedding material. She brings Paris, but not peace." Scratchy, tense, deliberate. The words hit me like shards. Sometimes you hear the truth in someone's tone before their words finish. I didn't reply. I paced across the room, hands pressed over my ears, trying to will the world quieter. Then I stopped, pulled out my notebook and began jotting names, dates, phrases, like building a map of their betrayals. You don't heal by confronting them. You heal by knowing exactly who they are. I saw the pattern, the quiet smiles when I stayed silent, the claps when I took less space. I wasn't misunderstanding. They had rehearsed this version long ago. I didn't send a message back. I didn't demand explanations. I needed strategy, not drama. My phone buzzed. I saw, "Dad, we need to talk. Urgent." He who told me not to come was suddenly desperate for me to answer. But I don't move for echoes. The apartment was still, no wind, no footsteps, just the muted hum of the refrigerator and the ghost of that email still hanging in the air. I hadn't turned on the TV, didn't even bother with music. The walls felt closer now, or maybe it was me, shrinking. I sat on the edge of the couch, laptop open, staring at the file I'd saved. The subject line was harmless, family rehearsal, final cut. But I knew better. I hovered the cursor over the play button, heart caught somewhere between fight and freeze. What happens when silence speaks louder than words? The video started, familiar faces, laughs, Dad giving a toast, my cousin's baby smearing cake on her dress. It was all there, the usual chaotic, curated family joy. Until it wasn't. The clip jumped abruptly, no transition. 1 second, Mum clinking a glass, saying my name. Next frame, I was gone. My name cut mid-sentence. My face never appeared. I replayed it, slower, frame by frame. It wasn't sloppy, it was surgical. They'd cut me out like you crop a photo to forget who stood beside you. They saw my presence as a problem, so they made me invisible. I rewound. Background voices blurred, but one thing stood out, the laughter after the cut. Not joyful, nervous, like relief. My phone buzzed. "Thora." I hesitated. She never called unless something cracked inside her. I picked up. Her voice was tight, breath hitching between syllables. "Del, they didn't want you in that cut. They said your face would distract." Romilly and Marlis insisted I didn't want to, But you did," I whispered. I tried to push back. "They said you'd make it about yourself. They said Paris changed you, that you'd overshadow her." Silence on my end, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was weighing everything. "I was trying to protect you," she said almost inaudibly, "but I hid you instead." I leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. "Tell me everything." Thora's voice cracked more than once. She spoke of dinners where I was the unspoken joke, conversations where I was the shadow in someone else's success. They spun stories, she said you always thought you were better, that you kept score. I didn't need her to say more, I already knew how deep it ran, but hearing it broke something else. Not just betrayal, but the betrayal of seeing people I loved lie to themselves too. I sat motionless for a while. Then a single quote came to mind, something I'd once heard an old friend say. Sometimes we protect those we can't stand because fear binds us more than love does. I turned to her voice again. When did you start believing them? Thora went quiet. That told me enough. I didn't lash out, didn't sob, didn't scream. I opened my laptop again. I forgive you, I said, but I won't stay silent. I typed an email to my lawyer, attaching the video. Subject: line, evidence, family omission. I considered making a post, public, loud, but deleted it before I finished the first sentence. Not yet. I needed position, not attention. Instead, I wrote out timestamps, quotes, background chatter, built the timeline, labeled it all. They wanted a clean story. I was preparing the director's cut. My phone lit up again. A new message. We've scheduled a family meeting tomorrow. Expect us. No context, no apology, just instruction. They called it a meeting, but I knew it was a trap. I lined up the laptop on the small table near the window, the Seine faintly visible behind me. The light caught my face just right, deliberate, not vain. The space looked like an interview set, orderly, deliberate. I whispered my line one last time. This is not about rage. This is about rights. My voice came out flat but steady. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. The folder of evidence open on the screen, screenshots, audio files, timestamps. For a heartbeat, I thought of closing it all, of letting it go. Then I remembered the text that started it all. Silence might be golden, but clarity is platinum. I clicked the meeting link. Faces flickered to life like old photographs. Dad's square jaw, eyes harder than before. Romilly, lips pressed into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Aunt Marley's perched with her usual passive-aggressive tilt. Thora sat small in her frame, gaze darting down as if she'd rehearsed apologies she wasn't sure she'd say. Thank you for agreeing to talk, I said, voice even. You didn't have to run to Paris. Dad's tone was soft, practiced. I leaned in slightly. You told me not to come, I obeyed. No one spoke. The air was thick with old roles trying to reassert themselves. I straightened. Let's start. I know about the photos, the voice note, the dress, the charges on my card. My voice didn't shake. This isn't an emotional outburst. It's a legal situation now. I'm considering contacting the venue, even the press, not to smear you, but to set a record. Romilly blinked, then laughed once, sharp. You're always making yourself the victim. You were always the shadow at every party. I let her words hang. You think you're so much better running off to Paris, she snapped. Jealous of my wedding, jealous of everything. Silence was my weapon now. I let her unravel herself. Her voice rose. You bring Paris, but not peace. You never did. That's why you're out. When people tell on themselves, I said quietly, you let them finish the story. Thora's voice cut across the feed. Enough. Dell didn't deserve that. Aunt Marlis disconnected, her square going dark. Dad's expression faltered, his voice dropped low. What do you want? I stared at the screen. I wanted to matter, but I'll settle for not being erased. No one replied. The meeting ended not with resolution, but with reckoning. 2 hours later, still seated at the table, the laptop closed. My phone buzzed. A message from a family friend I hadn't heard from in years. I know what they did, it read, and I have proof. The morning air felt sharp against my skin when I cracked open the window. Paris moved below me like a film, muted but still playing. Bakers setting trays of bread out. Bikes rushing past. Voices carrying fragments of words I couldn't quite catch. My phone buzzed again on the table, persistent. I ignored it at first. thinking it was another echo from my family, but the name stopped me. Julian Dempsey. It took me a few beats to remember, my father's friend's son, always around but never noticed. His message sat in bold letters. You're not crazy, I have proof. Call me. I sat down, elbows on my knees, staring at the screen like it might bite. Was this another trick, or the last puzzle piece? My heartbeat picked up. I grabbed my coat and walked to the cafe across the street, ordered a coffee I wouldn't drink. The phone sat between my palms like a secret I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The truth always comes at a cost, I thought. The question is, who pays it this time? I called him from a corner table facing the window, my reflection faint in the glass. His voice was calm, steady, like a man rehearsing something too heavy. Del, I was at the rehearsal dinner, he began. I heard them, Romilly and Marlis. They were laughing about you. The words landed heavy. Heard what? I asked. I didn't plan to, but I was filming for Instagram. I saved the clip instead of posting it. A pause. I think you should see it. A notification flashed on my screen. I pressed play. Romilly stood under string lights, champagne in hand, hair perfect. She never belonged here anyway. Paris suits. People who want to pretend they're someone, she said, eyes bright with mockery. Laughter rippled behind her, Marlis's sharp giggle, my father's low grunt of approval. My stomach clenched. It wasn't careless, it was surgical. Julian cleared his throat. I didn't speak up before, didn't want to stir things. But after watching that meeting last night, I couldn't stay out of it. I took a slow breath. You saved all this? I thought you'd need it one day. For the first time in days, my voice softened. Thank you. He hesitated. There's more, a longer clip. A private conversation between your dad and Romilly. I recorded it without meaning to. Do you want it? Yes, I whispered. The file landed in my inbox seconds later. I slipped on my headphones and pressed play. Romilly's voice, sharp and unfiltered. If she shows up at the wedding, we'll pretend we didn't reserve her seat. My father's response followed, tired but complicit. Let's hope she takes the hint. I don't want drama. The cafe blurred around me. People laughed, spoons clinked. A child cried somewhere near the door. I sat perfectly still. It wasn't misunderstanding, it was orchestration. They'd built a stage where I didn't exist. They planned to make me feel invisible, I murmured. The words tasted like metal. I walked back to my apartment slowly, each step deliberate. Inside, I sat at the table, coffee still untouched from the cafe cooling beside me. The pain was dense, but so was the clarity pressing in behind it. I opened my journal and wrote in block letters. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a strategy. And now I need one of my own. For the first time, I wasn't mourning. I was planning what to protect. The phone lit up again, vibrating across the table like a small earthquake. My father's name filled the screen. We need to talk. Now. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not because the place was messy, but because I needed control over something. I straightened the couch pillows, wiped the counter twice, lit a candle I'd been saving for no reason. Other than tonight felt like the kind of night that needed something that smelled like lavender and resolve. Then I set up the tripod, angled the camera, made sure the lighting wasn't too harsh but not too forgiving either. In the silence before I hit go live, I rehearsed it all in my head. The opening line, the pause, the look. I'd say, this isn't a plea, it's a statement. I wanted to sound calm, not angry, not desperate, just finished. The clock ticked 7th hour PM in Paris, which meant the family meeting in Jersey was starting. Somewhere in some overly decorated living room, they were sipping wine and pretending I didn't exist. But they were going to see me tonight, on my terms. Not as a whisper, not as a rumor, but as fact. My hands rested on the table, right next to that same folded napkin I used to keep in my lunchbox as a kid. I ran my fingers across its seam like muscle memory, quiet armor for what came next. I went live. There was no introduction, no backstory, just a plain, "Hi." Then I leaned in slightly and said, "I've tried kindness, I've tried silence, I've even tried pretending that absence was peace, but let me be clear, I don't need any of you now." A pause, just long enough to let the sentence breathe. Then the slideshow began to rotate on the screen behind me. Emails, still images, parts of a video. Nothing salacious, nothing tabloid-worthy. Just the kind of cold, undeniable proof that didn't scream. It whispered in court language. I kept my voice measured. No trembling, no peaks, just firm. I explained how people steal more than things. They steal narrative, and I was taking mine back. For a moment, the live chat froze, then it flooded. Names I hadn't seen in years, comments from college friends, some distant cousin from Nevada I barely remembered, messages from strangers I'd never met. Some kind, some cruel, all watching, all seeing. Romilly's face appeared on the viewer list. Of course it did. She looked pissed. Red lipstick, sharp. Her comment came through, "You could have called. This is manipulative." I read it out loud. Manipulative? Then I looked into the camera. Manipulation is when you tell someone they're family and then erase them at the dinner table. My father's name flashed next. He didn't write anything, just watched. My mother joined seconds later. Her profile icon's still that blurry beach photo from years ago. She didn't comment either. She never did in real life. Why start now? I let the screen go still, no slides, just me. And then I said, "The loudest voice in the room is usually the one terrified no one's listening." The stream shifted. At the mark I'd set earlier, the prearranged clip played. The rehearsal dinner, the one from Julian. There I was, laughing in a corner of the frame, blurry but visible. I wasn't supposed to be part of their story anymore, but there I was, living, present. There was a collective pause online, a digital inhale. Romilly's feed glitched. She was caught off guard, stammering in a chat message that made no sense. She wasn't supposed to be. Exactly. I smiled, not out of pettiness, but because I saw what they saw, that I'd existed all along, that they'd edited me out, and now I was back in without asking. When the clip ended, I turned to the camera one last time. You made me invisible. I made myself undeniable. Click, I ended the stream. I sat in the dark, laptop humming. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just sat. I watched the comments update slowly. For every insult, there were 5 messages of support. Some were surface level, others deep. People remembered me. Some said they never forgot. Some admitted they were sorry for not speaking up sooner. I didn't need their validation, but it didn't hurt to know I wasn't alone. I closed the laptop, leaned back, breathed. I'd never felt more tired, but for once the fatigue felt earned. Like finishing a long race with your own shoes on, not someone else's. Then the phone lit up. It was Gideon, his message. "We need to talk tomorrow, in person." I stared at it for a long time. Of course he wants to talk now. He wants me present, after telling me I was not. I chose the cafe in the garden near Gare de Lyon deliberately. Open air, public benches, people walking past. No room for secrets. I arrived early, sat facing the path. I watched shadows shift as people passed. If he came, I wanted to see him first. The air smelled of wet grass and warm stone. I ordered black coffee. No sugar, no milk, just starkness. I steadied my breath. No crying, no explanation. I reminded myself, this isn't a reunion, it's a reckoning. He appeared 15 minutes later, slower than I remembered, but unmistakable. Tall, composed, carrying that old weight of expectation. Gideon nodded once. "You look strong," he said, voice unsure. I leaned forward. "You told me not to come. Let's not pretend we're surprised by the outcome." He shifted. "Your sister was fragile. We were trying to avoid drama." He started. I cut him off. "You orchestrated mine. That was the drama." He blinked, throat working for words. I pressed. Did Mom know? Was she part of this? He hesitated, sipped water. The cafe's ambient noise seemed distant. She didn't stop it, he said finally. I remembered a quiet moment in our kitchen once, Mother silent while Romilly complained, while I tried to object. Now it made sense, even the quiet ones can be complicit. He took a breath. Romilly manipulated her for weeks. She told your mother you'd take attention she wanted, that you'd overshadow her. My breath caught. He handed me a folded note. Your mother wrote this, never sent it. My fingers opened it, the ink faint but clear. I didn't want to choose sides, but I did. No tears, just a new ache, burning clarity. I stood. This conversation is closure, not invitation. I turned, no hug, no backwards glance. Forgiveness doesn't require return. I walked away. Back at my apartment, the door was cracked. A letter slipped under, no name. I opened it slowly, the first line. I saw what you did, I was there. It's time you knew the full story. It was late, the kind of late where the city hums soft and low, as if it's exhaled all it can for one day. I sat alone at the desk, tea steeping beside me. No music, no news, no distractions, just the letter, no return address, no signature on the envelope. But the handwriting, clean, slanted, practiced, was unmistakable. Romilly. Some letters, I thought, are bombs dressed in paper. I opened it slowly as if a faster tear might set it off. First line, if you're reading this, it means I finally told the truth. It was her. She'd written it before the wedding, probably planned to send it, then thought better of it. That was her, always pulling back right before stepping forward. The words rolled out in her voice, almost too easy to hear. She wrote about growing up in my shadow, about how teachers, friends, even our aunts would say, "Why can't you be more like Dell?" She said it built in her, not hate, but a gnawing belief she was always one step behind me, always the understudy. I wanted one day that was mine, she wrote, a day where I didn't have to compete with the sister who always seemed to get it right. So I planned the wedding without you, because I needed a perfect day. And that meant no you. She called it ugly. She called it weak. But she didn't take it back. At the end, she added, I hope you get to live a life without needing anyone's permission. I sat still. I didn't cry. The weight of truth sat with me, but it didn't crush me. I read it twice, once like a punch, the second like a page in a finished chapter. I whispered, so it was never about the wedding. It was always about her. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer, not to forget, but to file under. Known. I stepped out onto the small balcony. The air smelled faintly of rain on stone. Cool, grounding. No ghosts in the wind tonight. Later, I opened my laptop. Not to respond to her, but to begin my own story. Blank page, cursor blinking. What happens when your family writes you out? I typed. You write yourself in. For the first time in a while, I didn't flinch rereading my own words. I glanced at my phone. No texts, no calls. Just peace. I considered staying in Paris. Maybe taking that pitch meeting with the magazine editor Julian mentioned. Maybe turning this mess into something someone else might need to hear. A line from Mum came back to me, one of the rare things she said with edge in her voice. The best revenge is not a sharp tongue, it's a life you love. I let myself smile. No one else was writing my chapters anymore. The next morning I walked to the corner bookstore. Quiet place with soft chairs and an owner who didn't ask questions. I bought a leather journal, blank pages, sturdy spine. At the cafe next door, I sat by the window and wrote the first line. This story begins where the hurt ended. No titles, no daughter of, just Dell. The walk home was slow under soft yellow light. Paris had this way of making even the hard things feel survivable. No more missed calls, no more explanations. Sometimes starting over doesn't mean erasing, it means owning the pen.